Hi guys, Charlie with Boxing Focus, and I just wanted to collect a few thoughts on Froch versus Groves, which turned out to be a pretty strange, anticlimactic fight. But that's almost the wrong word. The fight itself was a bit of an anticlimax up until the knockout, which was spectacular. And I think what we learned from that fight was Froch actually was making a good point about Groves' trainer, Fitzpatrick, who it seems took Groves technically backwards in that fight. Gone was the ducking under Froch's shots. He was putting far too much emphasis on being at distance to the detriment of his own work, which I kind of, my prediction video, I did pick Groves on points, but I was a little bit torn at the time. I did predict correctly that Groves was talking a load of nonsense about this Hagler Hearns, about gonna knock Froch out in 3 and all that. He was just trying to confuse Froch, and his obvious game plan would be to try to keep the fight long, because he seemed to be winning the long battles in the first fight. But the first fight, it was affected by multiple things, including Froch fighting a bit recklessly. He did fight a lot smarter. I did think that there were few adjustments Froch could make, but didn't quite turn out to be true, because they noted at the end, after the fight, that they were throwing the left hook a lot more to pin Groves' right hand high there. But I felt that Groves was. It's not like in the first fight he was ready to pounce. His right hand was a little bit lower, but he was moving a lot more smartly. He had better head movement. He was ducking. If Froch threw shots from too far away, he would just duck under them and spin out. And he just wasn't doing any of that this time round. Before the fight, I thought Froch looked horrendously nervous. He really did. He wouldn't look at Groves. He looked. The expression on his face before the opening bell. I don't think he was afraid of Groves. Don't doubt that for 1 second. But I think he was afraid of I think he was a little bit overwhelmed by the event, and a little bit probably petrified of being found out in front of such a large crowd. But Groves didn't put it on him early. Froch was allowed to settle, allowed to start building a bit of rhythm, and even though Groves found a bit of rhythm of his own, he wasn't really putting his shots together. He was trying to land just one right hand at a time, and he fought a much smarter fight in the first fight. And I know that you can't really compare the two, because he caught Froch pretty cold in the first round and dropped him heavily. But even up until that, he was still aggressive and sharp, and that was just lacking in this fight. And it just seemed that his trainer really hasn't, he allowed Groves to develop bad habits. What's this, countering a left hook with a left hook? It's absolute nonsense. Any trainer worth their salt would not let you counter the opposing hook like that, because you leave yourself wide open, because your hand has to come away to throw. So this is my right hand, so this is my left hand. So if you're going to throw a left hook, you have to pull away your hand in order to throw the hook, and that leaves you wide open. So if your opponent is throwing a left hook and then you try to counter with a left hook, well, if you throw in one hand, the natural hand to come back is the other hand. So it's very easy for him to put 2 shots together and catch you down, straight down the middle with the right hand. It's absolutely dreadful technique, and he says he made a mistake, but I just think that a combination of I think the atmosphere, the event, got to Groves more than he let on. He didn't look as nervous as Froch. He looked a little bit more intense, but he was trying to live up to his word too much of knocking Froch out with the left hook, and they obviously had been working on it in training, but they hadn't been working on when to throw it. They really hadn't, or if they had, they'd been working on when to throw it at the wrong time. And that comes down to the trainer. I don't think Groves was getting great advice in the corner either. And And Froch, he was more patient this time, and just when the chance came, presented himself. Left hook, straight right, beautiful shot, absolutely clean knockout, no controversy about stoppage. Saying that, there's a little bit of a, I don't know. I mean, it's becoming so safety first boxing. Why not just do the 10 count? Is Groves' health really that kind of risk that the referee could not have counted to 10? Not that I'm saying, don't get me wrong for 1 second, I don't think Groves would have been able to continue. I don't think there's any hint of controversy in the stoppage, but it's just, I would like to see the refs issue the 10 count before making the stoppage. They've got incredible amount of medical staff and equipment on site these days at these fights. Just because Groves was out for a few seconds doesn't mean that he has to jump on him and give him the kiss of life. But that does not. It was a great knockout. Froch didn't think performed that well up until that moment, but it was just patient. Patience, the right word, and stuck to the body shots. The body shots that worked so well for him in the first fight, working very well for him in this fight, even though he wasn't given as many opportunities by Groves. He made his own, got in there, would unleash 3 or 4 at a time, and land at least a couple of them. And Groves wasn't doing that. He was. Another adjustment that Groves seemed to have made was this jab to the body to keep Froch away from him. Andre Ward does that very well. Did it really well against Chad Dawson, for example, but I don't know, he seemed to neglect the things that worked well for him in the first fight. He took up these new techniques, this jab to the body, these counter left hooks, stuff like this. It was all at the expense of the things that he did well in the first fight, which was good movement, a constant threat. He would let Froch get into range, and then he would come at him with the straight right. He would counter with the jab, and because he was putting so much emphasis on staying out of Froch's range, he took away his own offense. And when his own offense wasn't there, Froch had no reason to be apprehensive about letting his hands go. So as soon as he did get into range, he just let his hands go, because Groves was not prepared to he wasn't like a lion in the grass waiting to strike as soon as Froch got close. So Froch was just closing the distance and throwing his shots and being a bit smarter defensively, and Groves unfortunately had gone backwards since the first fight, which is pretty big knock on Fitzgerald, unfortunately, who behaved a bit moronically in the build-up as well. So congratulations to Froch. Once again, proves that he's a world-class fighter. It proves that he's not gotten old. Was in fantastic shape. I think he was. I think he had to be, because of nervous energy that he was burning before the fight started and in the early rounds. But once he got into his groove, he fought a much smarter fight and reaped the rewards. Anyway, that's my thought. That's Charlie with Boxing Focus. Let me know what you thought.